Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Those of you who are familiar with the tragic events in Zimbabwe, and we've been following it for some time, would know this gentleman, Pastor Evans. Yes, that's him. He is back. Yes, I know you're asking yourself, and what does he have to say this time? Well, actually, it's just a repeat of the same old story. Some things simply never change. Well, listen to him.
Fellow citizens, so what did you tell me? What crime did we commit to be treated the way we are treated? Huh? I don't get it. I just don't get it. Now, those of you that are leading, we had gone and we thought, no, let's maybe let's calm down. Maybe, but you know what? Zviri munyika munomu aiwa vakomanaka aiwa vadikani usatani hwacho, the things that you are now doing. Aiwa, guys, please. What amuna moyo here? Do you people not look around and see what's going on in this country? Do you not see the way people are suffering? Azvikubateiwo moyo kurwadziwa kuri kuitwa vanhu. Does that not move you the way people are struggling in this country? When you drive, I'm not drive a motor Mimi, those people, you guys that are leading us, because you're the richest. You're the ones who have access to money and to wealth. When you drive around, muchiona vana vachikumbira mari, vachikumbira chikafu. When you drive around, muchiona vana mai vakabereka vana vachitengesa pamisika zvinhu zvisingatengwe. And you see these women selling at their little market stalls things that don't get bought, and they're carrying their babies. You see men and women roaming around trying to survive, doing all. Does it not touch you? Are you people? Are you people? No, guys, I'm a pastor. I'm a man of God. And people have said to me, as a man of God, you shouldn't say these things. But I know. It is the very Bible that tells you and me, when you see wrong being done, confront it and condemn it. How does somebody import 2 Rolls Royce over $5 million? $5 million. Yema Rolls Royce. Munyika muno munenzara yakadai. Where there's 90% unemployment. Someone imports 2 brand new Rolls Royce. Oh yeah, nendegi. They come nendegi. Takatarisa. No. We don't even know. We don't know what kind of job you do. We don't know how you earn that money. And where did you get $5 million? Where we can't get it. Isus apana muna ruwana inini kuwana $40 ndiri kuishayo, but you can get $5 million to fly in 2 Rolls Royce, and people are struggling in this country. Mkoma andikushorei, my brother, I don't hate you, but you cannot do what you are doing. I want to tell you today, the judgment of God for the wrong that you are doing to his people is going to be harsh and heavy on you. I would ask you to consider repenting, turning away, and stopping what you are doing. But we have run out of what ideas. We don't know what else to do. I spent the morning at court. So I've got a tie on. I was at the court the whole day today, because I'm accused of disturbing the peace in this country. And yet all I've ever desired to do is to build Zimbabwe. We can't, old men and women can't get married. Asuma mulano importa mota ze $5 million. Mbiri ma Rolls Royce. Oya nende kipano pa airport up. Isitakataris. Vadikani, I want to warn you today that God is not a fool. Let me speak now as a man of God. This God is not an idiot. And I want to ask the powers that be, the president, please, sir, we are struggling in this country. Don't you get that? Your cabinet ministers, my MP, huh? You want people to start dying in the street for you to know that there's a problem here. May God help us. I speak to you today as a man of God, as a pastor. Justice is what we seek. We seek a good country. We seek, please. We're praying that God would help us. And He will help us in this country. In many people like me, you're going to have to kill me. Moto uraya na Ivan, because I'm not shutting up. And in nyara zvoku manyai. Ende ndinonamata zvokunamata futi. Kuti Mwari vatibatsire. Mazimba, God bless you. Kana uri munhu ari kutambura Mwari anewe. And God is coming to save you. He'll do well for you. Don't you worry. Can't go on forever like this. Mwari vakuitire zvakanaka. Keep praying for this wonderful nation of Zimbabwe. God bless you guys. Bye.
So what is his new message? That we should pray. Pray for what? The failure to understand the problem is one of the things that is really shocking about Zimbabweans. What do you want God to do? What exactly are you praying to God? What do you want God to do? God has given you one of the richest countries in the whole world. Zimbabwe is incredibly rich. But I agree, there is heartbreaking human suffering. But it's all because of bad governance. And we, the people of Zimbabwe, the ordinary people, you and me, have played our part in keeping these buffoons in office. Let's be honest. Mnangagwa and these Zanu PF thugs are buffoons. I mean, let's be honest about that. Who would inherit a country with so much wealth and run it down so badly that millions now are living in abject poverty? Basic services like education and healthcare have all but collapsed. Infrastructure, potholes everywhere. Anyone in the world who is keen to loot is in Zimbabwe, coming to claim their own share of the looted wealth there. Easiest country to loot. I totally agree with Evans. Here is an individual who is importing cars worth 5 million. And instead of shipping them like everybody else, he opts to have them flown in. Freight, air freight, costing another fortune. Corruption has become rampant in Zimbabwe. There's no denying it. But it's for us to stop it. The misrule is by human beings. God does not do for human beings what human beings can do for themselves. Stopping the gross mismanagement, the rampant corruption, the vote rigging. This is being done by human beings. It is in the power of us as human beings to stop it. We just don't want to stop it, that's all. We want God to stop it. Pray. There's nothing wrong with praying. So you've got to ask yourself, what are we praying for? I think Zimbabweans have used God now just the same way as Zanu PF has used the West to blame for all the country's problems. Zanu PF will blame the West for all the country's problems. Corruption is rampant. Zanu PF will blame the British and their West allies for that. Mismanagement is rampant. They blame the West for it. Zanu PF is even blaming the West for rigging elections. Indeed, they're using the West, the sanctions, as an excuse for rigging the elections. Zanu PF has made it clear that as long as the sanctions are there will be no free, fair, and credible elections. Because as far as they are concerned, the West imposed sanctions to cause regime change. And therefore, the Zanu PF must rig the elections to stop regime change. The truth of the matter is, of course, that Zanu PF started rigging elections long before the sanctions were even imposed. The sanctions were imposed in 2001. Zanu PF rigged the 1980 elections. They would not deny that Zanu PF did not honor the Lancaster House Agreement to withdraw all its freedom fighter operatives to assembly points, as agreed in the Lancaster House talks. Those operatives who remained in the field made it abundantly clear that if Zanu PF does not win the elections, the Bush would continue. Other parties were not allowed to campaign in certain areas of the country because those operatives told those parties that these were liberated zones, no go area for other parties. Of course, the people voted to end the war. That wasn't a free and fair election. You'll think, okay, we accept that maybe Zanu PF did not trust the British to conduct free, fair, and credible elections. They got into power in 1980. They had the chance to make sure that elections from there on were free, fair, and credible. No chance of that. Within 3 years of our independence, the regime was on a warpath. They launched the now infamous Kukuraundi massacre. The primary purpose of that massacre was to force then the late Dr. Joshua Nkomo and his ZAPU friends to give up their claim as an independent political party that would aspire to win the elections and rule the country. They were forced to sign the GNU, the Unit Accord of 1987. And that cleared the deck for Mugabe to impose his de facto one-party state. Zanu PF has been rigging elections, rigged the 1985, the 1990, 1995. There were no sanctions imposed then. I think we are making the same mistake here. Now, Zimbabweans, after 44 years of rigged elections, want to blame God for Zanu PF rigging elections, for Zanu PF causing so much suffering of the ordinary people. Why has God forgotten us? 44 years of rigged elections. It's interesting that Pastor Evans calls himself a man of God. So did Chamisa. He promised the people of Zimbabwe last year that Triple C was going to win those elections because he had plugged all the vote rigging, Zanu-PF's vote rigging loopholes. Hashtag God is in it. Other than Evans himself, I think Chamisa is one other person who has quoted biblical verses with every speech he has made. A man of God indeed. Evans participated in last year's elections. At least he did not come out to denounce them, to denounce the participation in those elections. And no doubt he was praying that Triple C would win big. Like so many. 2 million Zimbabweans voted for Chamisa in last year's elections. They believed Chamisa. It's a blatant lie that he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. How anyone can make such an outrageous claim and still evoke the name of God beggars belief. And so our friends, our prodigal pastor from the past is back to encourage us to go down on our knees again and pray. There's nothing wrong with praying. But we've got to ask ourselves, what is it we are praying for? For us to remain blind to the reality that the political system in Zimbabwe is not working and is a man-made problem. We need to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. And the solution is there. We had the golden opportunity to implement the democratic reforms during the GNU of 2008 to 2013. We failed to implement even one reform. I've never heard the likes of our pastor here calling out the shots and addressing Nelson Chamisa and his friends for their failures, for their betrayal of the people. I've never heard him say. In fact, he has been causing up with the opposition. We cannot pretend that we are powerless and we need God's help. When we have got all the power, it's just that we don't want to open our eyes. We did not have to participate in the flawed elections last year, just as much as we didn't have to participate in the flawed elections in 2018. And before that, 2013. We've been making the same mistake over and over again. We pray to God to do what? for our stupidity? We are the ones who are being stupid, ignorant and naive and gullible. We have been warned, if you participate in these flawed elections, you will be giving Zanu PF political legitimacy. And we still participate. What do you want God to do then? I think SADC has done us a great favor. In last year's elections, SADC condemned the election process for what it is, flawed. And illegal. This Zanu PF regime is illegitimate. Chamisa and company participated in those elections out of greed. They have known all along that participating in these flawed elections would only give Zanu PF legitimacy. This is a quotation I've often used from David Coulthard's book, admitting that the process is so flawed, so illegal, that the logical thing to do is to withdraw. But even he has admits in that quotation that he could not withdraw. Neither could his MDC friends withdraw, because they fear that the other side will participate and win the few gravy train seats that Zanu PF is offering to entice the opposition to participate and get legitimacy, and that they found irresistible. Why the ordinary Zimbabweans keep on participating in these flawed elections? To give Zanu PF legitimacy and give the opposition the few gravy train seats. And in return, get absolutely nothing. Perpetuate the dictatorship. And then we complain that corruption has become so rampant. Some people are importing cars worth $5 million US in a country where millions are living in abject poverty. Yeah, it's the same millions who are giving that regime legitimacy. Let me say it here, and I'll say it again. I've said it before. If the opposition, Triple C, had not participated in last year's elections and conned millions of their followers, the wildebeest had, to participate in those flawed elections, believing such shockingly idiotic lies like I've plugged all the vote-rigging loopholes, I believe SADC would have been empowered to deny Zanu PF political legitimacy. But even after SADC had said those elections were flawed, the AU had said that those elections were flawed, our SADC, our Triple C friends still went ahead and took up their seats, claiming that they had won, the areas in which they had won were liberated zones. Yeah, liberated zones. Did those areas have a verified voters roll, while the rest of the country did not have? Of course not. We cannot keep repeating the same mistake, the same idiotic mistake of participating in flawed elections, which we know they are flawed, to give Zanu PF political legitimacy. And when the damage is done, we get down on our knees and pray to God. Pray for what? God does not do for mankind what mankind can do for himself. It is within our powers to stop MDC, CCC selling out in participating in flawed elections out of greed. We do not have to participate in those flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy. We have been doing it out of foolishness because we do not want to think. We want to pray to God to what? To think for us. We have heard the warning. Why don't we listen to it? What else do you want God to do? I think we should not fall into this cycle of believing, or rather blaming God for not coming to Zimbabwe's help to get us out of this mess, when in fact, God has provided the help. It's just that we don't want to open our eyes and our minds to see it. I'll close this by playing a short video clip of what Dr. Mumba and his friends advised the people of Zimbabwe after the last year's elections. Instead of getting down on our knees, praying to God, I suggest that we get off our backside and do the right thing for a change. Stop participating in flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy. That is all we've got to do.
Nice idea, but it won't help. It'll just formalize the reality that poor countries can never repay their loans.
Sorry, I got the wrong clip there.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, let me be clear that the changing of any dynamic or situation in any of our African countries is a preserve of the citizens of that country, in this case, the Zimbabwean people. An election observation team goes there to support the process by observing and being able to release a statement of our observations that, for instance, in Zimbabwe, we raised several issues of transparency and also the independence of the electoral commission and things which happen in many other countries, you know. But at the end of the day, once we produce the report and make it available to the Zimbabwean authorities and eventually to the Zimbabwean people, it really remains the preserve of the Zimbabwean people to fight for the freedoms that they need themselves and to correct those issues that have been observed. The reason why we have multiple observation missions is to ensure that, you know, there's a comparison, you know, taking place between the SADC report and the European Union report, the African Union report, and then they can see that those issues that repeat themselves in all these reports, it's up to the Zimbabwean people. And this is where I appeal to all political leaders, not only in Zimbabwe, especially the elections that are coming in Mozambique, that are coming in South Africa, in DRC. We have to make up our minds that, look, at the end of the day, once the people in the country are given an opportunity to monitor the elections, because they also monitor, it starts not during the day of the elections. They must make sure that the constitutional lacunas that can affect a good election are dealt with months before the election, and they must fight to ensure that there's a level playing field. They should never wait for the time when the election is taking place. They must also insist that the electoral commissions and the governments in those countries abide by international norms in holding democratic elections. And this fight must be more vicious before the election comes.
There you have it. The answer is very simple. The SADC election observer team noticed that Zimbabwean elections were flawed. We did not have even something as basic as a verified voters roll. Why are we keeping on participating in such a flawed electoral process? To encourage people to participate in such a flawed electoral process. And then when Zanu PF comes out the winner, we blame God. I think it's the most idiotic argument I've ever heard. To claim that I've plugged all the vote rigging loopholes, hashtag God is in it, is the most idiotic claim that I've ever heard. Of course, God is not in it. Why should God be involved in such an idiotic arrangement? We should stop abusing God. God gave us the intellect to think for ourselves. In Zimbabwe, I think many of us prefer to bury our heads in the backside of our leaders and then when things go wrong, we think the solution is us going down on our knees and praying to God to save us from all this suffering. No, the solution is for us, for once, to open our eyes and see that the political system is not working and doing the right thing to make sure that it works. Making sure that elections are free, fair, and credible is not rocket science, for Pete's sake. Why in this day and age we seem to be struggling to define what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections? Beg us belief. Well, Dr. Mumba there in that report has told us you need to implement the reforms to make sure that the electoral process is transparent. We've got a verified voters roll. If we keep on insisting in participating in flawed elections, because Chamisa has promised us that he has plugged all the vote rigging loopholes when he has not done any such thing, and we believe him, that we deserve to suffer. And I can tell you now, Zimbabwe is not getting out of this economic and political mess until we open our eyes and our minds and do the right thing for a change. Making sure that elections are free, fair, and credible is not rocket science. Making sure that we have got a verified voters roll is common sense. Why are we praying to God? Pray to God for what? That we may have common sense? No. We just want to pray to God to solve the problem while we have our heads buried in the backside of people like Nelson Chamisa. While we worship him as if he's a God It is shocking that so many Zimbabweans continue, even now, after all the evidence of the rigged elections, continue to treat Nelson Chamisa as if he's a god. Chamisa lied about plugging the vote-rigging loopholes. He did not even have the decency to deploy election agencies at all the polling stations, even though he had got the funding for it. And how we can sweep all that under the carpet and still continue to believe in him, trust him so wholeheartedly, so blindly, beggars belief. If Zimbabweans participate in the 2028 elections because they believe in one of Chamisa's lies that he can win rigged elections, it is not God's fault. It is our fault. And I wish people like our friend here, the prodigal pastor, should stop spreading false hope that by getting down on our knees, we can win rigged elections. Because that is exactly what he's trying to tell us here. We just need to think. Hashtag God is in it. Coming from the likes of Chamisa, it's nothing but evoking the name of God for his own purposes. He knows that the minute he evokes that word, the name of God, there are some people out there who abandons their ability to think for themselves and believes everything he says. I think that kind of level of naivety is our greatest undoing as a nation. We want free, fair, and credible elections if we are going to get out of this economic and political mess. And it is not rocket science. It's for us to demand it. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you'll be able to join me and my guests tomorrow at 7 o'clock for another discussion. Thank you and good night.